Hello, and welcome to School to Homeschool. My name is Janae Daniels. I'm a wife, a mother of 6, and a former middle school teacher turned homeschool mom. I have kids in their 20s, all the way down to elementary age, and everything in between. Are you thinking about pulling your kids from the public school system like I did, but you are scared to death and don't know what to do next? My friends, I felt the exact same way. And you have come to the right place. I want to help your family leave the system so that you can take the hearts and minds of your children back. Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I'm very, very excited to have our guest on today. I'd like to introduce you to my very dear and close friend, Angela Winterton. And let me tell you a little bit about Angela. Angela has several kids, which she'll tell you how many she has. And I've known Angela for several years, and she started homeschooling about 6 months before us, which we'll talk about. And she'll be sharing her experiences today about leaving the system as well. And the reason I particularly wanted Angela on was because she is a working mom. And so for those of you that are working, this one is especially for you because this is something that Angela's had to work through as she's been homeschooling. So Angela, my dear, I'm so excited to talk to you. My dear friend, welcome on.
Thank you so much for having me. What a pleasure.
So first of all, tell a little bit about yourself and your family, and then we'll get into the story of how you started homeschooling.
Okay. So I have 4 kids, and my daughter is 15, and then I have 3 sons underneath that, 12, 9, and 6. And we have lots of energy in our house. Lots and lots of energy.
I'm right there with you. So, and then when did you start homeschooling? Let's talk about that because you didn't always homeschool. You're like me. We are not long-term homeschoolers.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I had a couple friends who tried to introduce me to homeschooling, and I attended a TJ Ed meeting, and Jay, that's my husband, and I talked about it when we got home. We're like, this is crazy. These guys are weird. They're so weird. But it was always in the back of my mind, like, okay, there's some people who are doing it. I'm just going to kind of watch and see what happens. And if their kids turn out okay, we'll see. And then January of 2020, I had this feeling that would not go away. Like, I feel like God was telling me, you need to homeschool your kids. And it was somewhat out of the blue, but also not, because we had some things that were going on with the school system. My daughter was in 5th grade, and for a class project, the teacher said it was okay for them to be on TikTok. And my daughter didn't have a cell phone. And I was like, this is not okay. Yeah. There were some gender issues going on as well that I just didn't want my kids exposed to. And then so my son, who was in 2nd grade, was struggling with friends and some depression. And so all of those things combined just kind of made me go, all right, I think I can explore this a little bit. And that nagging voice in my head just would not go away. So January 20, I started researching. I contacted everybody I knew that homeschooled. And I was probably a little bit annoying because I was like, can I please just come and watch you? Can I see what homeschooling is like? Nobody would let me do that. But they were happy to show me curriculum, show me their schoolroom setups, and just talk me through some things. And that gave me the confidence. So about a month later, I pulled my then 2nd grader from the school. And I thought, I'll just try it with one out of the 4. Maybe we can just not mess it up too badly if we start with 1. And so we did. And then a month later, COVID hit. School shut down. Everything was closed. And they immediately went to online learning. We did 1 day of online learning, and I said, this is stupid. This is ridiculous. I was already planning on homeschooling. Why would I continue to torture ourselves meeting on Zoom all the time? My daughter was miserable. Like, this was just so dumb. So I pulled them all out, and that's when we officially started homeschooling all 4 of our kids. And I was so grateful for that initial month of preparedness so that I had an idea of what I needed to do.
Angela was one of the people that I called. For those of you who heard one of the first episodes, when I first had that thought, I think I need to homeschool. I went home from church that day, and Angela was one of the first people I called. And I said, okay, tell me what's been good, what's been bad, all of this stuff. And you were like, it's been thus far good. We're not very far into it, but it's been good. And we decided. And so then 2 days later, I'm like, and I did it. I pulled them. And Angela you were there for me, and we started doing stuff together on Fridays with our kids. Angela's one that we made made soap with our kids together, and we went on some field trips together. And Angela was the one who said, you should read The Brave Learner by Julie Bogart, because the other couple books that I had started reading that I was like, I can't do this, I'm just going to put them back in. And you're like, no, start with The Brave Learner. So we started doing stuff together. So let's talk about your journey then as you began to homeschool, what that looked like initially and where you are now. Let's talk about that little journey that you've gone through, because now it's been several years.
Yeah. So when I first talked to you, I think I was still in the starry-eyed stage. Like, everything is so great. We're reading together. We go outside and the kids have so much fun. And, it was great. And it really was. It was beautiful. I remember to this day, one of my fondest memories is of the boys jumping on the trampoline. I was reading Willy Wonka to them. And it was magical for a little while. And then it got to lose its luster. The kids realized that this was going to be our way of life from now on, and they started to rebel a little bit. And looking back, I wish I would have deschooled first, but I felt like I had to just jump right in and start learning, like, oh my goodness, they're going to fall behind. I just need to start teaching them. And so I had my house set up like a schoolroom. I had a whiteboard in my kitchen. We sat down and we did workbooks and worksheets, and we were just doing all the things that I thought you had to do to homeschool your kids. And that started to just not work for us anymore. And then in the fall of 2020, we moved to Idaho from Colorado. And that was a major life shift. And so I had to...
And I was still really mad about that, by the way, because we had just started doing stuff together and you were like my person, like you were my support. Anyway, I was very sad that you moved. I'm still
sad about it. I'm still sad about it.
Me too.
So there were several times in the past 2 or 3 years where things have happened. I had major life changes, whether it was moving or whether it was financial or whether it was health related, that I had to reevaluate what we were doing and take a look at our system, our process, and decide, okay, am I going to keep homeschooling or should I send them back? Because it got a little rocky. And whenever I would pray about it, I knew that the answer was, you need to keep homeschooling. Whatever you do, just keep going. It will be okay. And so we made little adjustments and we're still figuring things out. I think that's one of the lies that you don't hear about when you start homeschooling, that you're going to constantly be readjusting, reevaluating how things are going and making changes along the way.
Which I think is a blessing with homeschooling, because in the public school system, you can't do that. You can't change curriculums or just stop learning whatever, because the teacher's like, oh, there's 30 kids and this is, the textbook that we have to use. But in homeschooling, we can do that, even though it's hard and a painful process. We can adjust.
Yeah.
And it's true. We're perpetually adjusting. As I mentioned, that Jacob is on a fast for video games currently and counting down the minutes to when he gets to them back. Because it wasn't working. So and I remember early on, I was like, what did y'all learn about? And you're like, we did plate tectonics with graham crackers. And we had started deschooling at that point. And I still was like, oh, should we not be deschooling? But then I realized with the mutiny with my own kids that I had to, otherwise someone was going to be voted off the island and it was most likely going to be me. So then, as some of the shifts, do you mind sharing some of the shifts that happened for your family? Or is that too personal?
Oh, no, that's fine. Yeah. So the first big shift was the move, as I mentioned. And my husband decided to start his own business at that time when we moved. So we moved into my parents' basement, and bless their hearts for letting us live there for 2 years while we were homeschooling. It was crazy, but they were so good about it.
And Angela, tell about your parents a little bit. What are their
Yes. So they are both school teachers. My dad taught 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. He was a basketball coach. I mean, now he writes curriculum for the school district. So he is very pro school system. And my mom, she was also a home ec teacher. And to their credit, they have been so supportive of our decision. It has not been in our realm, like, you go to school, that's what you do. Even if you're sick, you go to school. It's that important. Like, you don't miss school. This is important. So.
Yeah.
So yeah, we moved into their basement for 2 years. And then I started suffering with some health challenges and found out that I had an autoimmune disease. And so that threw things out of the whack. We finally were able to move into a place of our own, and just so many changes. And at that time, my daughter was transitioning from middle school to high school. We were still trying to find friends and, like our community for homeschooling. So there was a lot going on. And on top of it all, I felt the need to go back to work. And so I've been working for the past 2 years while homeschooling.
So let's talk about that a little bit. What have been some of the challenges there with going back to work? And what does that look like as you homeschool? Are you part-time or full-time?
So I work 30 hours a week right now.
So that's technically full-time.
It is technically full time. Yes. I started out part time. I was just doing things in the off hours. So my schedule was really flexible. But then they promoted me to different positions. And so my schedule became less flexible. Still, it's a really good setup. But I had to adjust because my working hours now are anywhere from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that was the biggest thing that I had to change was my mindset around when do we do school?
Mm-hmm.
Because in my mind, you do school, you get up, you start school and you get it done. And, it's 8 to 3 kind of a thing, or 8 to 1 or 8 to 2 or whatever it is. And that was right when I was working. That didn't work for our family. So I had to rethink, learning doesn't have to happen between 8 and 2. We can do it on the weekends. We can do it on the evenings, things like that.
And so what shifted? What does your day look like now that you are working full time? And what do the kids do while you're working? Let's talk about that.
Okay, great question. So I usually wake up before the kids and I try to read my scriptures and feed my soul first and then get ready for the day. I start working right at 8 o'clock and the kids wake up on their own anywhere between 7 and, let's be real, 10.
Mm-hmm.
And when they wake up, I try to gather them for a short little snippet of reading or some sort of devotional, just like really tiny. I'm talking 2 minutes, 5 minutes. We're not reading for an hour. And so after that, I juggle my work with monitoring them. So they each have their own set of things that they have to accomplish before they can go out and play. And if they need help, I'm there so I can answer their questions, but I'm not actively teaching them at that time. It's pretty self-directed. Mm-hmm. And then we have lunch. And at lunchtime, I try to do something similar where we talk about something or I try to read to them. And then after I get off work and we have dinner together, that's really the time when I try to have full conversations with them. And then after dinner, we finish up anything that they hadn't done during the morning time. If they had questions on it or we just didn't have time to get to it.
Gotcha. So do they do a lot of free play in the afternoon then?
They do a lot of free play in the afternoon. We live in a cul-de-sac and they ride their bikes and it's so fun for them.
I love that. Okay. So what are the things that you're like, they have to do these things? And for those of you new to the podcast, like I am a firm believer, like kids need to read, write, and do math. But then beyond that, as parents, we might be guided to do different stuff with our kids. So in your family, what are the non-negotiables that the kids need to learn?
Reading, writing, math. I listened to your podcast from, I think it was last week, about the essentials, or a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, that's what we focus on. They have to do that. My 2 boys, my middle children, are doing Me Academy. And so it gives them a list of things that they have to do. And there's also some science and some history that's thrown in there, but it's really great because they know what they have to do that day. With my youngest, who is almost 7, we do a couple workbooks and then I have him read to me and I read to him. And that's pretty much what we focus on. And then we can do other activities like history and science when I have more time, when I can actually put the experiments together, or we can take a field trip.
Gotcha. And how do you feel like that's been working for your family? Like making that adjustment where, okay, nighttime we're going to do, I'm there, mornings, you're going to figure things out. How has that helped? How has that worked for y'all?
Well, it took a while to transition. I think we're now in a good groove. But at first, like I said, my mind shift was, I'm so guilty. I want to spend time with my kids in the morning and I'm just not giving them what they need. And then I had to realize that, no, I am giving them what they need. We're just doing things a little bit differently.
I think you bring up an interesting thing is I think, especially for those of us coming out of the system, there is a perpetual like I find myself reverting back going, I have to, and then I have to calm my brain and go, no, I was conditioned to believe that this is the way things are because, with the system and they've been at it since 1850. So it's going to take me some time, Okay, so let's talk for a minute about what do you do with the kids while you're working? Like, what are some of the things that you do to keep them busy?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, I save all of our hard one-on-one subjects for later when I can devote my full attention. And so I have things that they can do independently, whether that's on a tablet or whether that's in a workbook or reading. Make use of audiobooks. If you can't read out loud to your kids, let someone else do the reading for you. Mm-hmm. We do YouTube videos. And also I find that having more open and go activities are essential. I don't have time to plan an activity where we mummify a chicken every day. Like it's just not going to happen.
Never heard about mummified
Oh, it's the
chicken.
story of the world. It's really awesome. And it sounds amazing, but I don't have that kind of time. So I have to find things either online, or the library has provided me with multiple resources of like little kits where it's just, it's there. It's already prepared for you. And so your kids can be exploring those kinds of things while you're working. I also rely a lot on my older kids to kind of mentor the younger kids. So, hey, Luce, go read to Noah for a little bit, things like that. And honestly, giving them freedom to explore. So there have been a couple times where my son was like, hey, I want to bake these garlic Parmesan rolls. Great, buddy. I cannot help you at this time because I am working, but go for it. I'll stand in the kitchen. I'll make sure you don't kill yourself, but go for it. And you know what? He did it. He was 9 years old and he did it. It was amazing.
And how did they turn out okay?
They were delicious. They were fantastic. So just giving your kids maybe more confidence in their abilities and not feeling like you have to hover over them every second. Obviously for 2 and 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds you do, but as they get older.
Yeah, when they're legitimately can be independent, then letting them.
Yeah, exactly.
And I look at my 8-year-old and Kara has become so independent and so capable of doing stuff that with my older kids, I was always like, oh no, they're only 8. They can't cook. They can't be in the kitchen cooking. And yet Kara the other day made full on frosting. She kept coming in and I was trying to help Jacob with something. She kept coming in going, okay, so if it's the 1 over the 4 and it says TSP, that's the little one, right? And I'm like, yes, let me show you, and I'll show you fractions really fast. But it worked out. And the kitchen was a disaster. It looked like a bomb had gone off, but we could clean it up, and she and I cleaned it together and it was fine. But in the past, I wouldn't have let them at so little, have so much freedom. And yet they are so much more capable than I believed. With him.
Absolutely. Yeah. You think about 100 years ago, kids on the farm, they had to milk the cows and go out and do hard things. And we're like, oh, let me help you make your peanut butter sandwich. They can do things.
Yeah. And I look at even back, in Franklin's time, Benjamin Franklin's time, and how at 12, he was working as an apprentice for a printer, and he was more than capable. And by 16, he stowed away. But anyway, that's another story of running away to work for a different printer than his brother. But I think I feel like they're like kids get into college and they don't even know how to do their laundry now. And then they're trying to figure out their major. And I'm like, we have done a disservice for our kids. I felt like that with my older kids. Like I actually did them a disservice by doing so much for them, and not going, okay, yeah, you are capable at 12 years old of doing your laundry, and I will show you how, and you can do it. Although Jason and I have fought over that because he's like, my mother did my laundry until I was 18. I'm like, yeah, not mine. There was 8 kids in my family. And at 7, 6, my sisters are like, this is how you do the laundry. Any questions? Don't smell bad. But I even knew somebody in college who he had never learned to do basic things like laundry. And he told me, he's like, my clothes were always dingy when and until my roommate said, why are you washing your clothes? He's like, yeah. And he's like, let me see which laundry detergent you're using. And he had been using fabric softener instead of laundry detergent. He's like, there's a difference. But his mom had always done everything for him. Like he couldn't even boil water. And I'm like, that's doing our kids a disservice. But I love how you're like, no, give them the freedom to explore. Granted, make sure they don't burn the house down, but don't be afraid. I love that.
Yeah. And they spend a lot of time playing outside too. Mm-hmm. I love that we have a backyard. Like, go run, go. My son's right now, my little one, he's digging holes in the garden. Like it's a big job, and he's very serious about it. But
but for him, it is a big job.
Yeah, for him, it is a big job. So allowing them to get outside and explore and just, that's a lot of times what they do while I'm working. And then we can have those times together as a family, like at meal times or at bedtime when we are spending the quality one-on-one time. But when you can't, let them explore, let them be bored. It's okay. They hate it. They will complain and think that you're killing them. But that's when true creativity emerges, is when they're bored. So
It's true. It's true when they're not perpetually entertained.
mhm.
I think we'd have, because in my opinion, we have great entrepreneurs, right, in this world, but I think we'd have far more if more people gave their kids the freedom and the blessing to be bored
Yeah.
and not be so entertained. Yeah, anyway, that's just my thought. Let's talk about your your observation as a parent leaving the system versus the mindset of those who have always homeschooled or pulled their kids like in kindergarten.
Oh, yeah.
How do you feel like it's the same? How do you feel like it's different?
Well, different, I think the main thing is that mindset of school, the school hours, the school rigor. You have checklists, you do your things, and there's not a lot of freedom for exploration. Whereas the homeschoolers who have done it from day one, it's a little more organic. Like they just come up with things to learn throughout the day, and they incorporate their regular lives much more easily than I do, just simply because that's not been my mind shift.
Yeah. Now, do you remember like beginning, because it sounds like from when you and I started to, well, you had started before me, but that fall when we were doing stuff together, you were far more rigorous back then. What changed for you to let go of they have to, I have to prepare a lesson about plate tectonics and use graham crackers, which I actually love the idea still.
It was fun. It was a great activity. It was honestly, I think, realizing that my children had their own personalities, their own ideas of what they wanted out of life, and that no amount of my forcing them was going to create a peaceful, happy home that I wanted. And so when they started to push back against certain things, I had to step back and say, okay, this isn't working for us. Why? Is it too hard? Is it just not the right fit? What is it that's not working? And a lot of it was they wanted more time to choose what they wanted to learn about and what they wanted to do.
Let's talk about that, because let's talk about like your oldest daughter, some of the things that you've discovered she's loved and finding resources for her versus like your son, who has obviously different, the next oldest, who has different opinions of what he wants to do.
Oh, yeah. So my oldest, she is very artsy. She is creative to the core, and she's my social butterfly. So she is very into drama, drawing. She loves learning about Greek mythology. She's just a gem. She loves to try anything that's artsy, which she did not get from me. So a lot of her learning we have tailored so that she can listen to it while she does something creative. So she'll listen to history online while she's drawing, or an audiobook on Greek mythology while she's painting a picture or something like that. So for her, that's what her learning looks like. For my son, who's the next oldest, he is much more hands-on. He likes to take things apart, figure out how things work. He likes to learn on his own. Like, don't put me in a group. Don't tell me how to do it. Just let me figure it out. And so we find different projects for him. And then my youngest, they're kind of a mixture of the two.
I love it. So, okay, I want to talk a little bit, because this is something that we've discussed, if you're comfortable discussing this, taking their hearts back and some of the concerns that you saw prior to pulling them, and what that looked like and what you did to get their hearts back.
Yeah, great question. Well, I think it was a huge blessing that we moved when we did. We had great friends, great neighbors, great school community, despite some of the challenges that we had at school. But I noticed that my daughter was gravitating towards her friends, and like whatever they did was paramount in her life. And if she could not be with her friends every second of the day, she was just a mess, just devastated. Like, my world is crashing because I am not playing with my friends, And so when we moved, we had a chance to just gather our little family and reestablish those connections through activities, through mealtime, through talking. We spend so much time talking through feelings and problems and concerns. And little by little, the friends lost their appeal. I mean, she still is social and she still loves to be with her friends, but she's definitely centered around our family. And she will come to me and talk to me. And I know that if I hadn't taken the time to have conversations with her, that would not have happened.
Yeah. How did her behavior shift when you started taking her heart back?
She was much more agreeable, happy. If I would ask her to do something, it was not a problem. She would ask to do things with me. I mean, she was a happier, a lighter person, just back to her normal, happy self.
I love that. And so for those of you that are new to the podcast, I would highly suggest if you struggle with your kids and that they're what's called peer oriented, which is not psychologically healthy, as I learned once we started homeschooling. I thought it was normal, not so much. I would suggest reading the book, Hold On to Your Kids by Gordon Neufeld. And I did interview his daughter, who's a clinical counselor as well, Tamara Stryjak. And I'll put a reference to that podcast so you can listen to that. But that's one thing that as I started homeschooling as well, I realized, oh my gosh, it's not normal for our kids to always want to be with their friends. It might be typical today, but it's not normal in the last, since the history of the world began. That's a very 3 generations new phenomena, which is why we have a lot of the problems that we have. And the school system adds to that problem, doesn't help the problem. And so that's something I remember you and I had talked a lot about is like, okay, let's get our hearts back. Like, let's take them back because they're our kids and they need healthy relationships. Okay. So your days have shifted. What are some of the things that you struggle with now that you may not have thought that you'd struggle with in the beginning?
One of the things that I struggle with is just household organization and streamlining everything so that my days flow smoothly. And so I've had to really learn to simplify. I have gone through and I've decluttered meals. I used to love to cook meals and I would pore over recipe books and I would go shopping for all the deals. And I was like, that was just a huge part of my life. And I had to let some of that go and be like, okay, we're just going to rotate some of the meals. It's going to be more simple and it'll be okay.
You're going to have spaghetti once a week at least.
Yeah. Spaghetti, tacos.
Tacos too.
Yes. So taking care of all of those other details of my life freed up my brain power to help homeschool my kids, to focus on schooling, because when my house is a mess or there's too much going on, I can't focus. So I had to take care of that and simplify those things first.
Nice. Now, what about activities for your kids? Like, let's talk about socialization for your kids, how they remain connected, what it looked like trying to find a new community, all that good stuff. Let's talk about that.
Well, I love it because whenever I take them in to see a pediatrician, one of the questions they ask after they find out they're homeschooled is, oh, what activities are they involved in? I'm like, oh, just, you don't even need to worry about it. They're fine. They're totally fine. So we are part of a co-op that meets every Wednesday and we have different classes. That's where my daughter does drama and she loves it. And she also is taking a writing class at the local library. My next oldest son, he joined the Civil Air Patrol and he does that every week. And he also does parkour at a gym. So that keeps him busy. And my third son takes electric guitar lessons. He was doing drums, but now he's switched to electric guitar and he's doing taekwondo. And then my youngest son, he just has a lot of friends in the neighborhood. So at this point, he's just playing with kids outside and family get-togethers. And so I am not at all concerned about them interacting with other kids.
I love that. Yeah. I think it's interesting. I don't know if you were like this prior to homeschooling, but for me, I felt like my kids had to be in soccer, like all of them had to play soccer, and then they had to play t-ball, and then they had to, and my girls all had to do dance, and they had to do gymnastics and dance and all of the things. Like I was a perpetual taxi. And it wasn't until after we started homeschooling that I'm like, do they have to do soccer? I mean, they only go for the treats anyway.
Right.
Like you say, what's your favorite part about soccer? The snacks. Really? We just spent how much on soccer? And did you go through something similar, or have you always been like, no, let's keep it pretty simple as far as activities go?
No, I wanted them to be involved in things because as growing up, I had experiences where I was able to be enriched by other opportunities, whether it was violin lessons or trips to the Washington, D.C. with different groups, clubs at school. So I wanted them to have that. But I think I did maybe start out thinking inside the box, like you said, soccer, t-ball, the typical YMCA sports. But I've grown, like that wasn't a good fit for my kids. And so we started looking outside of the normal range of activities. And we found some really cool opportunities for them, things they love.
I love that. I love that your son does Civil Air Patrol, because that's not an in the box activity. It's not soccer. It's not t-ball, and it's not basketball. It's different. What are some of the things that you did as a mom to start to discover what your kids were interested in?
I just took them to several activities and let them try things. Usually community activities will have an open house day or, hey, just come and try it. Come see what you think. And so I was pretty good about taking them to different activities. We would try it for a little while. And we've tried a lot of things that did not work. And you have to have the courage to say, okay, this one didn't work. This wasn't a good fit. Let's try something else. Because in the back of my mind, I'm always like, well, if we quit now, does that mean that we're quitters? And like, are they ever going to learn to stick with something? And then I had a psychiatrist tell me, he's an amazing person, that it's totally normal for kids to go through this phase of exploration. And they might be so passionate about guitar one day that you buy them the guitar, they go start taking the lessons. And then 2 months later, they're like, yeah, this isn't my jam. This isn't what I thought it was going to be. And it's okay to have them explore and to do those things, to try it out before they know what they really want to do, what they're passionate.
So I love that. And I hope as listeners, you heard that, like it's okay to explore, and it's okay if they make a choice to not continue on.
Yeah.
I know with some of my kids, we went through the magic phase and then the magic card phase, but like one of my kids was determined that he wanted, is actually one of my older kids was determined that he wanted to know magic and become the next, is it David Copperfield, who's, I can't remember the guy's name in Las Vegas. And that lasted like 2.5 minutes after I had purchased all the magic sets that you can buy on Amazon. Anyway, lots of wasted money there. Should have just gone on YouTube.
Well, and I think there's pressure too, to start your kids very young and have them into a niche. Like if you want to be successful at ice skating or gymnastics, you start them at 3 years old, and that's what they do for the rest of their lives if they want to be good and competitive. And realizing that it's okay if my daughter is not the next Christy Yamaguchi or whatever, you can just take some of that pressure off of yourself that, most kids aren't going to be the next Michael Jordan, and it's okay. They don't have to decide when they're super little to do all of the things.
Yeah, it's true. I didn't discover that I liked homeschooling stuff until I was 40. So how long? 43. I wouldn't have known it. I knew I liked education, but I wouldn't have known. And life kind of takes us in the direction it takes us with our interests ultimately.
Yeah, for sure.
So you had mentioned there was a quote that you wanted to share.
Yeah.
Would you mind sharing that quote?
I just finished reading Modern Miss Mason by Leah Bowden, and this just really hit me to the core because it's something that I've struggled with. I watch other homeschool moms, and I just have this beautiful, rosy picture of what their home life must be like and how amazing at homeschooling they are. And I know that they are. I'm sure they are in their own way, but I've built everyone up on this pedestal, and I've held myself to such a high standard that I would never be able to meet it. And so when I read this, I thought, yes, this is it. So she said, I came into the home educating life somewhat confidently. I had idealistic views from the books and the blogs I'd read, which convinced me that teaching my children at home would result in endlessly inspiring, shiny, and perfect lives for the whole family. The problem with having fixed ideals rather than a clear vision is that they can undermine our own decisions when we don't live up to these expectations, but rather guarding ourselves from false ones. And here's the part. We can't keep attempting to live someone else's homeschool journey if we are going to embrace our own. I just want to mic drop. So
it's true. And no two journeys are going to look alike. And the reality is, I don't care how much people make their homeschooling journeys look rosy and beautiful. There are thorns on every rose, and there's hard in every, in every family, and there's perpetual shifting in every situation. And our kids are different than somebody else's kids, and their personalities are different than somebody else's kids, and our family dynamics are different. Man, I love that. So, advice that you'd give moms and dads that are thinking, and grandmas. Here's looking at you, Kathy. I know you're raising your granddaughter. Advice that you'd give new homeschooling moms or moms that are thinking about starting this beautiful journey. It is beautiful. It's hard, but it's beautiful.
I'm going to not give some of the typical advice that you can find that you've already discussed so well on your podcast, like deschooling, things like that. But 3 things that have really made a difference for me that I think help in any situation, whether you're new to homeschooling, whether you've been at it for a little while. And those 3 things are, number 1, simplify, as I talked about earlier. Number 2, prioritize. Most important for you and your family to communicate to each other, to learn about. It might be, read alouds. That might be your non-negotiable. It might be studying scripture. It might be mental health. It might be physical health. Whatever it is that you're prioritizing, make sure that you focus on that first, and then everything else will fall into place. And the 3rd, just embrace your own way of doing things. Have the confidence to think outside the box. Your homeschooling journey is not going to look like anyone else's, nor should it. And it's okay to get advice from other homeschooling moms, seasoned homeschooling moms, but then don't put this immense pressure on yourself to do it like someone else is doing it, because it's not going to work.
Love that. Last thoughts for today.
You can do it. It's hard. They told me that the first year of homeschooling was going to be the hardest. It's a lie. It's a lie. Years 2, 3, and 4 were hard. So I think every year you're going to be reevaluating. You're going to be questioning whether you're sane or not for taking your kids out of school, if you're going to ruin their lives. But hold on, just keep going. And the way that you're feeling in this moment is not going to last forever. Things will get better. You'll see little snippets of your children lighting up with passion, and it gives you enough hope to go on. And so don't give up.
I love it. Angela, thank you so much for taking time out of your day and from your kids and your family and work and all the things that you have on your plate. Thank you for the inspiring words. And thank you for always being my friend. I appreciate it so much. Love you back. So mamas and papas, you heard Angela Winterton, and she is right on. You've got this. You can do this. Even though it's hard, we can do hard things. You've got this. We'll talk next week.
If you enjoyed this today, please like and subscribe. You could also join our private Facebook group at School to Homeschool, or sign up for our newsletter at www.schooltohomeschool. Have a great day.